Good evening. Andy keeps disappearing. I don't know what's going on, but welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. It is Monday, and that means it is Monday night Euro review show time. Welcome to the show. And this week, we're joined by a former guest, and I hope friend of the show. There he is. Andy's back. We are joined by Piero Mingoia. Piero, how are we doing, mate?
Evening, guys. Well, thank you.
Very good. Andy, are you going to stay with us for long? What's going on?
Yeah, it's cut out on me twice when we were doing the intro, and literally just as the intro finished, he cut me out again. So,
You're here now. We're all here now. That's what matters. We're here safe and sound.
Back, to use the words of Take That, I'm back for good.
Back for good, finally. Finally. Good. So, a great weekend of Serie A and Premier League football. Lots of action to catch up on. Very quickly, Andy, what was your favourite game of the weekend?
Oh, I mean, it certainly wasn't the Chelsea-Manchester United one, to be honest. I didn't enjoy that game at all, but I thought the Villa game made me chuckle quite a bit, to be honest with you. I think, obviously, the performance was very, very good, but I think it was the fact that there was such an upturn in performance after looking absolutely clueless during, midweek. You hear that expression about, playing for the manager or not playing for the manager. And you kind of look, I mean, if I was Steven Gerrard watching that performance, I'd be throwing the glass at the telly or something like that.
Honestly, the mental image of him checking his phone and seeing the goals roll in just made me laugh so much. It's like, they've done what? Again? He must have been going mad at home. Absolutely loved that. Piero, what was your favourite game of the weekend? Which one did you enjoy the most?
Probably going to go Fiorentina-Inter.
Oof, that was a banger. We're going to get onto that one. I feel like Fiorentina are really kind of waking up a little bit, right? They had a rough start, but waking up a bit.
Yeah, I think they've got a good manager. Plays a good style of football, kind of on the front foot, attacking. And with the early goals, I thought it was done and dusted. And all of a sudden, late comeback, and then Mkhitaryan scores with a ricochet in the 95th minute. It's not a bad ending.
That was a great game. I really did enjoy that one. Nice. Well, we're going to start in Serie A, and we're going to start with your team, Piero, as Milan get one over their old owner, and Milan batter Berlusconi. Tell us about this game. How are you feeling about Milan this season?
Yeah, okay. I think Milan, for me, look like they just carried on the work that they've done in the last year and a half. Since lockdown, there isn't too many games where they look like they're not on it, barring let's say the first Chelsea game, but they always look like they play in a similar manner. Obviously you can win, lose or draw, but the way they play is pretty similar, and I think that's what you can ask for as a fan, that your team kind of goes for it more often than not. And yeah, kind of a routine win, but it was a good night's work in all honesty, because a few players got minutes into their legs that haven't played that much this season. And some players got a rest, which we haven't had a chance, because we seem like we had a decent squad, but at the moment it hasn't been used at all with the amount of injuries we've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's the first goal in Milan colours for Divock Origi. I think that's his first goal, right?
Yeah, I forgot Divock. I forgot he existed.
His output is honestly, he does seem really to score when he plays. It seems
never plays.
His hit rate is ridiculous, and a player that I think has surprised a few people. Milan fans weren't particularly happy with him when he first turned up, but this season he's doing really well. It's Brahim Diaz. What do you think's kind of caused this upturn in form for him? He's been unbelievable this season.
I think the fact that they signed Charles de Ketelaere for whatever money it is in his position, and then obviously he got dropped. He started off not bad. He got dropped for de Ketelaere, probably undeservedly, but just because he had a price tag on him, they had to try and force him in. Since he's got his chance, he's been unbelievable. And I think that saying of competition breeds kind of higher performances. That's the case, because maybe last year there was no one else in that position, so you'd almost play by default. But now he knows that there's a young boy behind him. He knows he's got to be on it, otherwise he'll be out of the team. And at the moment, he's proven why he should stay in the team.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable, and he of course scored that great goal against Juve the other week as well, which was like a really, really beautiful goal. Feels like he's been in some really good form, and of course the fourth goal. It felt like a while since he scored, but Rafa Leao back on it. Good to see him scoring again. Is he your favourite Milan player at the moment? It feels like he's every Milan fan's favourite player.
He's up there, but I'd keep Hernandez and Tonali in front of him. In all honesty, he can make the biggest difference, but for me, still, sometimes he looks like he's just not that bothered. He's got better with it. To be honest, he was more wild in the last year or two, but now he seems a bit more serious in the sense of he's getting goals and assists and not just playing around dribbling. So if he keeps that up, I think he can. Well, he is one of the biggest talents in world football. But for reliability and consistency, Tonali and Theo Hernandez are there for me.
I do like Tonali. Teo's an interesting one because I understand that Milan fans absolutely love him, but Inter fans absolutely despise him. I feel like he's a player that if he plays against you, you hate him. If he plays for you, you love him, right? He's just that kind of guy.
Yeah, he looks like a wind-up, to be honest. He's always in someone's face. Even 4-1 up against Monza, I think him and Pessina were having it out. And Pessina was just looking at him like, what's your problem? But
have you seen the scoreboard? You're all right.
Yeah, like, just leave us alone. Right. Leave us alone, he was thinking.
Very nice. Good. So that was a good win for Milan, which keeps them in the conversation. So Milan are now up to second, only 3 points behind table leaders who continued their unbeaten run, the only unbeaten team left in Serie A, as Napoli keep rolling, beating Roma after a long, not particularly interesting game. Osimhen finally got the goal to secure the 1-0 win. Andy, what did you make of this game? Mourinho, classic shutting down an exciting team. What did you think?
Well, like with always of Mourinho football, it's always results driven as to how you judge it. At the end, it's never going to be particularly aesthetically pleasing. You know what he's going to try and do, and he's never really changed of having a primarily defensive and counter-attacking setup. But I think they didn't create enough clear opportunities to do what we needed to do, and I think he'll be disappointed. I think with the how the back line left themselves exposed on a couple of separate occasions. Don't get me wrong, I think Osimhen's finish with a really, really tight angle was exceptional, but I think Smalley could have done a bit better, had an brief opportunity to control it. Didn't and let him in. And I think once you let a fella like Osimhen go in, that's it. And I think it's I think statistically it was his third goal in a row since coming back from injury. To have that depth, whereas last season it was a case of Osimhen got injured or had a loss of form. There wasn't really much in the way of backup, where I think this season it's clearly shown that Raspadori, etc., Villa, there's a lot more depth in the squad now, and that's why I think last season I don't think they would have necessarily got that kind of result in a very very tight game where it could go either way. They're grinding out the wins with the Haps not playing at their best, and that anywhere is always a sign of a team that could potentially win a championship.
Yeah, I think it was a really impressive performance. I think Mourinho actually did a really good job in the first half, keeping Kvaratskhelia completely quiet. Karsdorp, who's a player who has his ups and downs,
a little bit ropey sometimes, isn't he?
He really kept Kvara very, very quiet in the first half. But Piero, I'll go to you. What do you think Roma are missing this season? It feels like they're not quite hitting the heights they hit last year.
It's a good question. I think some games this season they've been okay, just haven't finalised. I think if Tammy Abraham was on the form from last season, this season, you would have seen them a few places higher. And considering if they won last night, they would have been 2 points off the top, 3 points off the top, something like that. So they're not too far away from it. But for me, the biggest difference at the moment is Tammy Abraham isn't firing, and last year he was, and he looks real low on confidence. In all honesty,
there was a moment after the game where Sorry, there was a moment after the game where he was kind of looking at the Napoli team celebrating. I was like, oh, it looks like it's really getting to you. I saw that the Roma XG, they're 7 goals under their XG. They've got the biggest deficit of any team in Serie A, and it feels like, they're really not taking their chances. But Napoli, literally the polar opposite, get one chance. Osimhen smashes it into the net. And as Andy touched on, all of a sudden, like, they could have started Raspadori, they could have started Simeone, but they've gone with Osimhen. If he can stay fit, how good can this guy be, Piero? Like, what do you think this guy's ceiling is? Because he excites me so much.
Oh, he's an animal. He's a beast. Physically, obviously, we all know what he can do, but he looks hungry. He wants more. He's never satisfied. And to be honest, when he was injured and they were winning games, I thought, is he coming back going to cause a problem? But it doesn't seem like at the moment. And the finish last night was exceptional. Just one thing on Mourinho last night. It was obviously, like you say, Mourinho trying to shut down a team, which is all well and good. But once it goes 1-0, it's like he's only planned for a 0-0. Because then when it won 1-0, it was almost embarrassing. They weren't even looking to play. They were just booting it without looking. It was just, and I understand sometimes you want to shut teams down, but in modern football, to not have an approach to try and win a game, I don't think it's possible to kind of win more often than not.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. I think when you start in reverse gear, to then try and go to third gear must be bloody difficult, right? Like, and you could see they all just went, oh, right, now what? Like, and it was just complete panic. Napoli had the game tied up from that point. But tactically, again, I want to, because he's a manager that I've had my doubts about in the past, but Spalletti is absolutely coaching the hell out of this team. Do you think he can coach them all the way? Like, I would love to see him lift a Scudetto, but do you think because I know in Italy he's very well respected. Like, what do you make of him as a coach?
I think he's outstanding. Some of the work he's done in previous clubs has gone under the radar, in all honesty. And just to point out, he started Inter's return to the top.
Yeah, that's fair.
He got them into the Champions League after years of rubbish. And then obviously Conte came in and then carried it on from there. But he was the one that probably closed the biggest gap from them being nowhere to getting into the Champions League. I think he can coach them to the league. I do believe that. The only thing with Napoli is controlling the environment.
Yeah,
the pressure.
There's a lot of pressure, right?
And that's what done them last year. 3 or 4 games where they should have won. The pressure was huge when Milan and Inter slipped up, and they just couldn't handle it because that place is different when it comes to pressure.
Yeah, it's like a nation, isn't it? It's like a nation waiting for you to lift that trophy. There's a lot of pressure there. And I was reminded this weekend, I completely forgot, Spalletti was also the one who kind of coached Mo Salah into the player that he currently is at Roma. Like, he was kind of lost between Chelsea and Fiorentina. He did pretty well at Fiorentina, but I feel like Spalletti was really the coach that brought the best out of him. And he's now got players like Zaniolo, again, if he can stay. He's got players like Lozano, who he's starting to get a tune out of as well, a player who's been very up and down. Feels like, maybe like Anguissa, maybe he is very good at getting the best out of players or kind of making them realize their potential.
We've mentioned Anguissa before, isn't he? Because he never really saw the best of him in the Premier League, I think it's fair to say. But, he's been encouraged to get forward a little bit more than he perhaps did, especially when he was playing for Fulham, etc. And you've seen that even in Dombele as well.
Yeah, like that guy, it looked completely lost at Spurs, and he really is putting in a hell of a shift at Napoli, playing that, covering for Anguissa really, really well. I think Spalletti is doing an incredible job. It wasn't the game we hoped. I thought it would be a little bit more entertaining than it was, but Napoli fans will not care in the slightest. That is a huge, huge win for them. Their first win in Rome for a very long time. But moving on, we need to go to Piero's favourite game of the week, despite it being for a win for his bitter rivals. Inter getting a last-minute 4-3, last-second 4-3 win against Fiorentina. Piero, I'm going to start with you, then we'll go to you, Andy. What do we make of Inter this year? It seems like they're actually in form now, even if they are leaking goals a little bit.
Yeah, so just before we jumped on, I checked. Obviously, they had a rough patch, and it kind of hit its peak with losing twice against Udinese and then Roma straight after. But since then, and I've seen a few of their matches, they've been brilliant. In all honesty, the 2 results against Barcelona, I think they beat Sassuolo as well. Something's changed. And I did notice they're playing Hakan Çalhanoğlu now in front of the defence, and that seems like it's working at the moment. That seems like the biggest difference, obviously, because he's normally playing behind the striker.
Yeah.
But he's been put in front of defence kind of to dictate play, and it seems like that's working. And obviously, a free game like when was it, Saturday night?
Yes. Yeah.
That could go either way. When stuff like that starts happening, it's just a matter of, like I say, Mkhitaryan scored a ricochet. So
I felt so bad for the defender. I felt really bad for the defender.
I know,
really
it's just
unlucky.
That's just a classic case of just not looking though. Like all he had to do was just take a little glance to his left and see him coming along, and he could have potentially like even tried to take a touch of the ball, then clear it. It's out of all the things he could do, that wasn't it. It was, he'll feel like a bit of a donut going into training this morning, but it's football, isn't it? Shit happens.
Your emotions, you equalise in the 90th minute.
Oh, you must,
and you go and lose as well. You think
it does feel like it's not meant to be at that point, right? You're like, okay, it just wasn't meant. There was someone had decided this already. Like this was decided. But for Fiorentina, a really encouraging performance. A team that's kind of was struggling to score goals. I think definitely struggling to keep up with the Thursday night, Sunday kind of pattern. It's the first time they've done this. But for Vincenzo Italiano, very exciting coach. Fiorentina will be okay, right? They'll still be. Do you reckon they can get Europe again this year?
I think they're doing. I don't think he's doing too much of a bad job, to be honest. They've got some decent players, and on their day, they've caused a few problems. Again, I just think they're lacking goals. I know the other day they managed to get 3, but they signed. Is it Jovic?
Yeah.
It just hasn't worked for him at all. And so, like you say, you can have all the nice build-up play, but you need someone to put it in at the other end. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
There's still 2/3 of the season to go, though. That's the thing. It's just, I think the World Cup break will be interesting to see what state teams are at when they come back from it.
I think for them, replacing Vlahovic was always going to be nigh on impossible anyway. It was going to be a tough job. But I think, Jovic is a weird one. He manages to fit certain places, but then doesn't elsewhere. I think, obviously, he scored at the weekend, right? I think he got the equaliser, right? But it's not been a happy time for him. But strikers that are having a happy time, Lautaro Martinez, again, a player who fans were starting to doubt, went on a bit of a drought. That first goal was absolutely beautiful. He seems like a striker and really in form at the moment. What do you make of him, Andy? Would you like to see him in the Prem?
Yeah, definitely. Especially my own team I support will probably be in the market for a striker of some description. And I think, I think there's plenty of admiring glances for him. Likewise with a lot of players, they go through a few games where I think he had to adjust without Lukaku last year as being the main man, and then he's come back this year, but Lukaku's been injured straight away. So I think he's had to adapt to a role as like the lone striker, which he's not really used to. And I think what you're seeing is this season earlier on was a few teething problems with it, whereas now I think he's got used to his role. He knows what he's doing within the team, and you're starting to get a bit more productivity out of him.
He's a really exciting player, and he's kind of a player I forget plays for Argentina and makes them even scarier for the upcoming World Cup. But what do you think of him, Piero? Do you think he's it's good to see him back in form, right?
Yeah, I think like Andy said, Lukaku getting injured probably didn't help him because he probably had the best partnership and they probably suit each other more than any others of the kind of inter players up front. But he's a very good player. Works very, very hard as well. He's like a ball, to be honest, like short, stocky. Very hard to get the ball off him. And on his day, he knows how to finish. So I think he's good. I think I can see him ending at Barcelona at some point.
He does have Barcelona written all over him, doesn't he? It's weird. I do kind of get that vibe off him. Yeah.
If they still exist.
If they still exist, they'll have to pull a few more levers where they can find them.
I love how they just invented rather than we're broke and we need a loan. No. They're called just economic levers. It's just
economic levers.
More
have you not
fancy.
heard of them before? No, they've always been here. They've always been here.
I'm just like, I'm pretty sure we didn't call it that. But we don't call it that.
They need a few more remortgages, and then they'll get Martinez.
Yeah, oh god, absolute basket case of a club. But moving on in Serie A, there's one more game we need to talk about. A game I really enjoyed. Now, it's a team that I often overlook because, well, it's Lazio, but they are playing very, very well. Sorry, Ball, it looks like is arriving to Lazio. Give him time, give him the players he wants, and he will bring you an exciting, effective brand of football that is a joy to watch. What do you think of Lazio this year? This is a huge win for them against Lazio, against Atalanta. I'm going to start with you, Piero, then I'll go to Andy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sarri, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
You give him time, he gets his way of football across to his players, and he's proven that time after time. For his story, his journey, he's a man with big things below, in all honesty. Leaving a banking job at 40 to start a journey in football management and then being able to get to the top, that's unbelievable.
It's insanity, right? It's insanity.
And sometimes people forget about that. But the way he plays, he likes to play football quick, kind of short passes, lots of movement. And the best Napoli team I've ever seen, he was a manager at. So he knows what he's doing, and you just got to give him time. He's a bit of a kind of weird character sometimes, but you just have to kind of manage that. But on the football pitch and coaching wise, I don't think there's much you can say about him in a negative manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he kind of he picked some. He made some poor choices in jobs. I think Chelsea were never going to give him the time. Juventus were never going to give him the time. But I think at Lazio, he's got a club that are going to give him as much time as he needs. As long as there's progress, they're going to be patient with him. And he's getting some performances out of players like Zaccagni from Verona has been incredible this year for Lazio. Mm-hmm. He was on loan at Verona last year. He got another goal this weekend. Players like Pedro, I think once he left Roma, people expected him to kind of, like Roma fans were making jokes about, taking our spare change. And he's just been unreal. He was again against Atalanta. And Felipe Anderson returning from West Ham, again, a player who looked a little bit lost. West Ham fans weren't particularly sad to see him leave. But he scored again at the weekend. Unbelievable under Sarri, and Lazio looking very good. What do you make of them, Andy? Do you think we should be talking about them in the title conversation?
It's probably a little bit too soon for a title conversation, I think. They have had some favourable position. I mean, they've played Spezia, Cremonese, Verona. They've probably on the whole beaten teams that they should be beaten. But granted that going to Atalanta away and getting that result, that is a statement result from them, because it's ultimately because they've been a little bit like Roma over the years, where whenever they come up against their peers or against a team that they aspire to be the level of, they've often fell short. And I think Sarri's always felt underappreciated. I think he won the Europa League at Chelsea, and
you're welcome, Sarri.
The Chelsea fans couldn't have been more ungrateful if they tried. It was very odd, and it's the same with Juventus as well. He won the league title, and I mean, it hasn't exactly gone well since he's left, does it? It's just sometimes I think he's one of those people where his face doesn't fit, or he doesn't feel like the right kind of face for like a commercially sensitive club, because Juve are very, very conscious about their image and how they appear to others. Chelsea are another one, and maybe he's never been that kind of guy that appeals. And you're right, he is also somebody where if you really, really want to get full Sarri ball flowing, then you need to give him a couple of seasons. And unfortunately, at Chelsea and Lazio, even though he won trophies with them, there's a lot more that goes into it than just winning trophies with those kind of clubs. Yeah. So I think at a good underdog like Lazio where he is now and Napoli where he was at the past, I think he suits those kind of clubs quite well. Because there's a good enough caliber of players for him to get his ideas across to, but perhaps he's not dealing with the absolute mega superstars, which it's caused problems in the past.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely spot on. And Lazio have done really well to hold on to a lot of these players. Like Milinkovic-Savic is still there. He's been linked away every single summer. It seems like he's going to leave, and he's still there. And it feels like he's really bought into this Sarri system. And he reminded me of that kind of. I was trying to think of what Napoli midfielder was his equivalent, like playing the Milinkovic-Savic role. I don't know if you have any clues for me, Piero. I couldn't really put it. I know it's not quite Alan because he's more attacking than Alan. And I thought, which midfielder do you think he plays the Napoli role of Milinkovic-Savic? It's quite a difficult question, maybe.
Who was it? Alan, Hamsik,
and then he had Alan Hamsik, and I'm going to have to Google the team. Bloody Lavezzi keeps coming in my mind. It's definitely not
he left years ago,
yeah. Can't think who it was. But the role that Milinkovic-Savic is playing is unbelievable, considering that he has been linked to move away every single time, and he is still a key part of that team. So Sarri absolutely killing it in Rome. They are now only 4 points off the top. I need to double check that. Yeah. 5 points off top. 4 wins in their last 5 with a draw. Lazio are cooking. It's an exciting title race in Serie A this year. Really exciting. Piero, as soon as it's your first time on the show this season, how do you see the title race going? I'm going to get a bold prediction. It's really tight this year.
I think Napoli and Milan will be in it till the end.
Okay.
But I can see a few more catching up. Because it was very close to happening this weekend. If Lazio won, but if Roma would have won, the top 5 would have been split by 2 points?
Yeah.
And I can see that happening pretty soon. And obviously, that's without Inter and Juve kind of going on a run and catching some points up. But at the moment, Napoli's a team to stop.
Well, regular listeners and viewers will know we are fully, despite the Roma shirt hanging in the background, we are fully on the Napoli wagon this season. I need to see them lift a Scudetto. But we are going to go. It's now Premier League time. And it was a pretty exciting weekend. Some good games. I think we're going to start with, Andy, I'm going to let you choose. Which game do you want to start with?
Oh, let's start with Aston Villa. Let's give them a little bit. Let's give them a bit of credit.
Start with Aston Villa. And it's a good evening. Sorry for the obvious joke for Aston Villa, as they have just appointed Unai Emery as manager. We'll get on to what we think about that. But this game, Andy, talk us through it. The shackles are off. What happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, Gerald got sacked, so that's what happened. I mean, we've spoken about it earlier this season, didn't we? I think we said before that his relationship with the players didn't seem to be particularly good. I know from knowing a couple of Aston Villa fans and seeing the reactions online, it always felt like Gerrard didn't quite bond with the Aston Villa fans particularly well. I don't think he ever quite understood. He never got a best 11. He couldn't get the most out of his own marquee buying Coutinho. There was, with Michael Beale being the tactics guy, I think Gerrard it's been quite exposed over the past year. I mean, if this was his audition to get the Liverpool job, it's absolutely failed miserably. It's not gone well at all for him. I'm not 100% sure where Gerrard goes next. I mean, he'll get a job because, let's be honest, he's Steven Gerrard, so he will get a job somewhere because that's how football works. And I suppose he has also won a league title at Rangers, so I don't think he's completely useless. I think he just made a bit of a hash of that job. But I think this game was a combination. I think Brentford, what you're seeing now with a few teams is the games catching up with them.
Yeah.
When you're playing like 6-7 games, and when there's still another 4 or 5 left for each team before the World Cup takes place over the next 2 or 3 weeks, is Brentford don't have a deep squad. So when you get a few key players of their lineup not quite performing, I think in Bremo missed like a 4-yard sitter. Ivan Toney wasn't quite as good as he has been, and although in midfield they're usually quite competent, quite solid, they're all over the place. Whereas Villa put in a great performance for Leon Bailey. I've always been quite excited by him because he did bits at Leverkusen. And I felt like he was always in and out the starting lineup, and I think he's just one of those players that needs to run the games, and hopefully he'll get that now. And Danny Ings, he comes under the category of a few players where it was one of those what ifs if he was injury free, because he is a really, really good finisher. And a very clever footballer. Like the way, especially for his first goal, he does that a lot. Where he's timing to run across a defender and first time finish. He's always been really good at. He's going back to when he was at Southampton, and even at Liverpool. In his brief games that he had there, and I think I think it's open season for a striker to get on. That's not Harry Kane to get on the plane at the moment to sit on England's bench and not play. But there is
a nice holiday. You can have a nice holiday, right?
Well, we call that a nice holiday, to be fair. But he's playing for, I think, whichever English striker's in form that's not Harry Kane will probably have a really good chance to go to the World Cup. And I think I think he's put himself in with a good chance because he has still scored a few goals this season in a very struggling side. The one that made me laugh though was the goal for Ollie Watkins. It was so Sunday League, and I was laughing. I mean, it was just absolute clown shoe defending where it's coming off a post, it's bounced off the keeper, bounced off the defender. I mean, he had 3 goes at it, and there was like 2 or 3 chances to clear it. The goalkeeper couldn't get off of his feet. And it was frankly hilarious, but
just one of those days for Brentford, I think. But Piero, I was going to ask you, how much now you've played for a few different clubs, right? Now you don't have to name any names, but has there ever been a manager where when they've left, you've notably seen a kind of massive increase in morale and performance? Because this seems like the two things have to be linked. Like, what could Gerrard have been telling him to do for it to make that big a difference?
Yeah, no, I've seen it a few times, and I think it's when the place just gets so toxic, it's hard for everyone, because all of a sudden you're playing a match and they want the manager to be sacked, let's say. So any little mistake is a moan, and obviously when there's 50,000 people, it's quite a loud moan. It starts to affect the players. They just almost freeze a bit. So I think it's more of a case of when the manager goes, it's like someone's just giving you a clean slate, and the fans are kind of almost on your side again. It's a weird one. So some players just become a little bit, take the shackles off and become a bit more free. But like I say, it's more just the toxic atmosphere that's created when it's obvious that fans have had enough. And that's why when that happens, it's only a matter of time before the manager goes, because even if he wins a game, all it takes is to lose another one. And for him to kind of turn that around, you literally need like an 8-game winning streak for everyone to forget what's happened. That's why once the fans turn, it's almost impossible to turn it around.
Wow. And well, speaking of which, they've now got their new manager. And what do you think? I'll go to you, Andy. But first, Piero, what do you think of Unai Emery landing in the Midlands? I think it's a very sensible appointment. I think it's kind of the best manager they could have hoped to get, really, like at the highest caliber, maybe, of manager. Someone very sensible. Is going to be cautious, but he will get you results. And hey, they'll win a Europa League. Like, that's what happens with Unai Emery, unless you're Arsenal, right? So congratulations, Aston Villa, on your Europa League title. What do you think, Piero?
Yeah, like you said, he's the Europa League master. But yeah, I think he's a good manager. I think he didn't do too bad at Arsenal either. Showed some good signs when he was there. But sometimes the case of, like Man United for a few years, the fans can't readjust their expectations. So they were expecting him to be Arsene Wenger, like they expected managers to be Alex Ferguson. So he's kind of fighting a losing battle. But if you actually looked into it, I didn't think he did too bad. And again, given more time, he might have turned out to to kind of spin it around for Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's gone to Villarreal and done very well. Got them into the latter stages of the European competitions. So yeah, he's not a bad appointment at all.
Yeah. What do you think, Andy? Excited to see him back in England? I quite like him. I got bored of him a bit, but
I think he got a bit of a rough time when he was in England. I think the English media, got to the point of almost being xenophobic, if I was to put it bluntly.
Was. I apologise for the joke below, but yeah.
But no,
yeah.
I mean, there was, I think there was a point. There's obviously making a joke about someone's accent, but I think with him, it got a little bit out of hand.
Yeah.
You know, obviously English is not his first language, and you do get managers who do struggle. But I think the thing with Emery is that, number one, he always tried. He always spoke in English, even he struggled with it. Whereas people like Bielsa never even really attempted to. I think ultimately he's on the football side of things. His win percentage is very, very similar to that of Arsene Wenger. But I think, unfortunately, at that particular time, I think Arsenal had a crop. They had that crop of really quite volatile individuals within that.
It was
team.
an awful changing room. It was an awful
changing room. You had Aubameyang, you had Ozil, you had
Ozil, Guendouzi, David Luiz. There was a lot of players in there.
There was a lot. There was a lot of players that you look at that. You look at which ones are still left at the club. It gives you a pretty I think in terms of what Arteta's achieved, I think Emery could have achieved that with a bit more time, but I think he's just unfortunate to be that guy that came after Arsene Wenger.
No, I think he also suffered a bit from the style of football. I think it was overly cautious, and at times it was just a bit like you need to attack at some point. But I think he was unfortunate. He was judged very, very harshly, and as you said, the dressing room was an absolute. It was a toxic waste bin of a changing room, and you're right. A lot of those players have now been moved on. So I think it's good to see him back in the Premier League. Really good to see him back in the Premier League. Good luck, Unai. Villa back smashing it. And we are being absolutely spammed on the chat. I've only just seen that, but someone, thank you, but no thank you. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, we've got Sex Chat 69. I think they've come into the wrong kind of podcast. It's certainly the wrong kind of tube.
But moving on from the excitement of Aston Villa, we're going to go to drawing forever, just forever drawing. Should we just cancel all Chelsea and United games in the future? Yes. They are a complete waste of time, and I completely wasted my Saturday afternoon. I can't remember what day it was. Time disappeared into that game. Andy, I'll get your view of it first. What do you think of it as a United fan? Quite exciting at the end.
Yeah, I think during the first half, I think we were by far the better team. We controlled possession, we felt like we were playing the home team. And Stamford Bridge is, I know it sounds such a cliche, but it's always, especially for United, it's always been a very difficult place to go. Don't often get a result there. I think the stats at the start of the game prove that we're out of the past 20 attempts or something like that, they've won twice. And it's the most drawn fixture in the Premier League. So it was, it's always a tough ask to go to a team that started to pick up some form. But I think we played really well. I think Anthony was causing all sorts of havoc down there. I think he's been a great addition. I think Casemiro, Eriksen, Fernandes, that is the best midfield three I've seen United rock up with for a very, very long time. I think it's been quite a few years since there's been that balance in midfield, which I think Casemiro especially adds. I think Casemiro had a really good game. I think it was interesting, obviously, with Graham Potter, he took off Cucurella after half an hour. I mean, you don't see many managers do it, really, do you? Typically speaking, most managers will wait till half time or give it the old 5 or 10 minutes afterwards and then make a change, because I think it's almost like an unwritten rule that you don't sub off a player in the first half
this is something I think it's something we might see from kind of modern managers more is when you see a clear error in your tactical approach, why not fix it there and then? Like, what do you think, Piero? Do you think this was Cucurella personally, or was this a tactical switch? Do you think we'll see it more often now? Because obviously there is a huge stigma of like he got hooked after half an hour. Like,
yeah, I think most of the time now it just highlights a manager's error. Maybe the way they prepared the game, it hasn't gone the way they thought it would during the week. So they obviously set up with the wrong formation, let's say. Unless you're having an absolute nightmare where you're just giving the ball away every 2 seconds and it's that obvious, normally it's just a tactical decision. And most of these managers now, someone like Potter, who's quite flexible in his approach, will kind of just take the hit on that and just say to him, apologies, nothing on you, it's all my mistake, but I needed to change the shape to give us the best chance to kind of to deal with his team.
I think it was really interesting to see from Potter, and I think Chelsea, it did massively make them more secure in the game. I think it made them kind of, because Man United, I think, were definitely the better team in the first half. Or Chelsea, and now I'm going to say this with a massive grin on my face because Chelsea fans, you're finding out why we wanted to get rid of him. Or Chelsea still looking for a number 9 because Aubameyang was absolutely anonymous again. Piero, I'm going to go to you first. Was it a terrible signing? I know that's a loaded question, but what did you make of the Aubameyang signing?
I wasn't too sure, to be honest, especially it was quite public what happened with Arsenal. And for you to go sign someone like that, I just don't think it's worth the hassle. He's not young. He's not really too bothered about where his career ends up, I don't think. He's on an obscene amount of money. So what's his motivation? That's what I question. When it gets tough, what's going to make him kind of dig deep and go again? I don't think there'll be much because he doesn't need much. No. But if he was a younger player, let's say, with his career on the line, they'll find a way to kind of get back into that team. Or for me, he just seems kind of happy-go-Larry. If it goes his way, it goes as well. If not, he'll just get the gold Lambo and kind of just enjoy life, which is fair enough. But for a team like Chelsea, I thought they'd be a bit more cuter with a signing like that.
Yeah, I think he was very much a stopgap, though, wasn't he? I think Timo Werner wasn't working. I don't think they had enough in the budget to get a proper pedigree striker in. So I think it was just a case.
Stopgap, though.
It is, and it is.
But that's what Chelsea do, don't they? I mean, United have done it for years as well. I remember getting like Falcao.
I would have rather Cavani on a free.
I think that's a massive shout. But I also think they've got Brozier on the bench. They've got Brozier, a striker who was good for Southampton last year. He kind of personifies like anger, aggression, hunger, like running, and he's a great, like, exciting striker. I really hope that Chelsea give him a chance, because I think what I saw in that Oba performance was what I saw for the last 6 months at Arsenal, which was just, unless the ball is physically on his foot, he's not running for it. And even then, he's probably going to put it wide and he's not going to be bothered afterwards. It was everything I saw from Aubameyang. And the first couple of games, I was like, oh, he's getting some goals. Oh, he's going to make us look stupid, isn't he? He's going to make us look stupid. He's still going to score against us. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. He's definitely going to score against us. But that was the performance that I'm used to seeing from Aubameyang. I think Chelsea have made a really, really expensive mistake there. But again, not the first one Chelsea have made when it comes to number 9s. Moving on from the Chelsea United game, because I think that was it, right? A nice moment at the end. Lissandro Martinez celebrating with the United fan. Yeah. You seen that on Twitter, Andy?
Yeah, the guy who actually was in the crowd sort of put a tweet about him. He's going to remember that moment for the rest of his life. But I think that is part of why Martinez has become a fan favorite so quickly. I think as well as it feels like he's a fan on the football pitch almost. Like I think he just again, to use the old cliche of he gets it. I think the fact he started off really well on the pitch has been quite good. I think as well. I think the donut award has got to go to Scott McTominay. I think you can't. I mean, on the one hand, it's a crystal clear penalty. You can't just grab somebody's shirt, pull somebody down. And
My
not
theory of
expect
him still actually being a professional wrestler lives on. I don't think he's a footballer. He's just found himself on a football.
But it's
pitch.
one of those. I was thinking about it as well because I was almost, when I looked at it initially, I was thinking, well, okay, fine. If the referee gives that as a penalty, you can't have any complaints. But how many times when when you see like a team take a set piece or especially a corner, how many times do you see players grabbing onto each other's shirts and stuff like that? If you gave a penalty every single time that happened, you'd end up with about 4 or 5 a game. I mean, maybe that's what it will take for it to stop.
I think we're heading that way. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
I think we're heading that way.
It feels like, well, okay, we caught the raw end of it, and I think he also has developed a bit of a reputation for doing that kind of stuff. But
I think I don't know. What did you make? I thought it was a pretty stonewall penalty.
Oh, it was a stonewall penalty. I'm just saying,
Piero?
what should be given?
Because then the next day, Arsenal got fuck all for the same thing. What did you make of the incident, Piero?
Yeah, I think it's a penalty. I think once you see two arms around the player, it's hard to deny it really. But the thing is with this VAR stuff, it's just like you said. The next day, something very similar is not given as a penalty.
Yeah,
and as a still bitter from the Milan-Chelsea game, Tomori.
He got sent off for it, didn't he?
Yeah. And he got sent off. Yeah.
And that's the thing that just doesn't make sense. So yeah, when somebody just grabs someone, both hands, it's fairly obvious a penalty. But you just like the consistency throughout, because at the moment, every day there's a different judgment on similar situations.
Yeah, it is infuriating. I was fuming on Sunday when we didn't get that penalty. I was absolutely fuming.
It's like
but we're going to move
Milan against
on.
Chelsea.
Yeah, oh mate, I was angry for Milan fans, I swear. I was like absolutely fuming. But we're going to move on to, as the meme that goes around, as the great Gandhi once said, never back the early kickoff. Nottingham Forest beat Liverpool 1-0. How the hell did this happen? What is happening with Liverpool this season, Piero? I'm going to start with you. What is happening with Liverpool, and how did Forest pull this off?
Liverpool just seem like they just need a reset almost, and that's going to be Klopp's challenge, I think. Guardiola's done it pretty well every few years, kind of reshuffling the squad and fresh faces, new motivations. He's still got a lot of the old guard who are kind of full up, let's say. They've won everything, and sometimes subconsciously, more than anything, it makes a bit of a difference. They're not meaning to, like, let's say, try less or run less, but when there's someone else that maybe hasn't won as much as you, they're willing to run harder. It's a different thing. They're not going to do it on purpose, but sometimes they don't even realise they're doing it. But they're just a little bit off what maybe they were 3-4 years ago when they hadn't won anything. And yeah, they probably deserve to beat Nottingham Forest, in all honesty. They had enough chances. But the way football goes, unfortunately, doesn't go your way. Dean Henderson pulled off unbelievable save of Van Dijk at the end.
That was madness, that save. Yeah.
So, yeah, when it rained, it pours. So that's kind of the thing. But they do look a little bit off it. And I've always said, if I compare Man City and Liverpool, Man City don't have to be at their best to wipe you away 3-0. Liverpool, for me, always have to be at 100 miles an hour, huge intensity. And it looks like maybe they can't do that every game anymore. And they're a completely different team when they're nowhere near that intensity.
I think you're absolutely right. But we have to give Nottingham Forest a bit of credit. I think Steve Cooper has switched it up a bit and has made them much harder to beat. And they are conceding less goals. So they've now only conceded 1 goal in the last 4 games. That's definitely showing an upturn considering they got spanked 4-0 by Leicester, lost 3-2 to Fulham. He's definitely tightened it up. Andy, I'm going to go to you. Have you been impressed by this kind of turnaround by Forest? Do you think we're seeing a bit of life, these signings coming into effect?
Yeah, I think what we've seen over the first 10 games is exactly what happens when you try and integrate 20 odd bloody signings into a team, and the amount of disruption that would have caused. And when you've got games every 3 or 4 days, you don't have that much time on the training ground to rework with it and try out your best 11. And I think Nottingham Forest, I think the owner has shown a massive leap of faith in the manager. I think he's looked at what's happened over the summer and gone, the recruitment was the issue. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was in the building when they were making.
He
all
would have
of
had
these
to
signings.
sign something.
He signed something, yeah. You know, surely when you've got to, like, you know, your 10th or your 11th player, you sat there as the owner thinking, hold on a minute, where are they going to go? But he's an eccentric bloke by all accounts, so it's probably not a surprise. But Steve Cooper is a very, very good manager. Like, don't speak to anybody who's associated with Swansea. They've got a lot of good things to say about him. Forest fans love him. And I think maybe there's this feeling that, you know what, let's just keep him in there. And I think he's slowly started to find a best 11. I think, you know, it's not his fault that Morgan Gibbs White cost 40 million quid, but he can certainly get him playing at a passable level. Again, I just don't know how he costs that money. I think with Lingard as well, again, he's not somebody I would have said would have been fantastic in a relegation battle. He didn't really strike me as that kind of character, but to be fair, like, he got stuck in there. And I think, you know, with Liverpool as well, I think the difference as well between, you know, what Piero said, obviously, about Manchester City not having to be at 100%, I think is also worth remembering the options that City have got on the bench in terms of personnel to go and, you know, make a change. If you look at the bench that Liverpool had against Forest, they had, you know, Alex Chamberlain, who's barely played because of injury. You know, Shimikas, Bobby Clark, Stephen Bajcetic, you know, Nat Phillips, you know, are coming back from injury. Trent Alexander-Arnold. They haven't really got a squad
like game changer.
Yeah, they haven't really got any game changer. I mean, Man City can have a £100 million Jack Grealish, who's just, you know, not as good as Mickey Almiron, sat on the bench. And that's the difference. And I think what Liverpool are finding is that when you play the same core group of players game in, game out for year in, year out, what you see now is almost a come down out of that. As Piero said, they've won everything, they've done everything, and, you know, maybe subconsciously, and also they're getting older as well. Maybe they don't have the fitness levels that they did a couple of years ago. And I think letting Mane go during the summer, I think that was a bigger loss than they perhaps anticipated. I think they looked at the time and thought, oh, we've got Diogo Jota, you know, we've got Luis Diaz. We'll be fine. And that because of injuries, that situation hasn't quite transpired. So I think
there was also a few players in that lineup where I was like, there was Sessegnon, there was Harvey Elliott. There's a few players where I'm like, you're going to be good players, but I think Piero kind of touched on it, and we've talked about it before, that it is a transition thing, right? Do you think Liverpool are going to be patient with him? Like, I'm going to go like, Piero, what do you think? Do you think Liverpool will be patient enough with Klopp? I feel like there's no way they're going to, like, sack him.
Not enough credit in the bank, surely.
Yeah, but, you know, it's like a few bad results and it can change pretty quickly. My biggest question on Klopp is now basically, can he reinvent something? Because for me, Guardiola's the best manager in the world,
right? Purely
for consistency and longevity. But to be fair to him, he evolves. He's not the same Pep Guardiola that come at Barcelona tiki-taka.
Yeah.
And even at Man City, he's played a numerous amount of different styles. They obviously had to adjust with Aguero, and Aguero had to adjust to them. But then Aguero went, and they've done all last season playing without a striker. And now they're playing with a massive target man.
He's not the archetypal Pep footballer at all, is he? No, but they've found a way to make it work.
He evolves and he changes every time, because after a bit, teams will find you out. And he always found, now he comes with like free, when they get the ball free at the back, and this is for me Pep Klopp's challenge. He can't play the same way because they'll know how to stop it. And I'm interested to see if he can do it, because if he can't, he'll end up being, let's say, like Mourinho, who just didn't evolve for some reason.
Yeah.
And then Guardiola stays up there, and that's another one ticked off.
Yeah.
Just purely because they refuse to evolve. I don't understand why. You'd think you kind of look and see where the game's going. Okay, my 4-4-2 or my 4-4-1, everyone behind the ball, it will work up to a certain point, but then we need to offer something.
Yeah.
Because it's before maybe you nick results and you can still nick the odd result, but I'm sure it rarely happens these days. The sit back and defend, more often than not now, the team that dominates find a way because the quality is too good.
Yeah.
And you can't like last night with Roma, they shut them down. But these players now, they're so good technically. You give them one chance, they'll take it, and the game's gone.
Yeah.
And that's not even a chance, Ozzy, man. That's not.
No, it wasn't a clear-cut chance at all.
But yeah,
We've got
most strikers, that is not that.
That's the level that
opportunity.
they get one sniff, and they'll take it, and then it's kind of like, well, what do we do now? Because we're losing. And that's literally what it looked like Roma last night. I know we're going back to that, but I was just players blindly just booting, not like a nice long ball, that's a long pass. Just literally, just without looking, booting it. And I was just thinking, what is going on here?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a big job. It's going to be a big job for Klopp. It's going to be a big job. I hope they give him the time, and I hope he gets the chance to bring these players in. And but there's plenty of managers. Arsene Wenger's demise was basically because he refused to evolve. He just stuck with the same thing. There's plenty of managers, great managers, that haven't moved on. Ferguson was the master of it, and that's why he was so good for so long, just creating, recreating. Yeah. So it is a big, big test of Klopp. But just the little kind of extra kick in the zipper was the fact that Awoniyi was in fact an ex-Liverpool player, never got to play for the team, and of course scores the winner just to rub salt in the wounds. But a massive win for Nottingham Forest. The atmosphere at that ground is absolutely incredible. I think there's going to be a few more scalps at the City ground. Always good to have them in the Premier League. Glad they are back. We're going to quickly, before we go to a very, very quick Champions League preview, we've got to say Miggy for the Ballon d'Or 2023. Absolutely killing it. The campaign starts here. Tottenham lose their first home game in, I think it was 8 or 10 games. It stretched back to last season. Huge performance from Newcastle. Andy, are they a problem? We're going to ignore everything else and just talk about the football. Yeah. Are they a problem?
Yeah, we could do a whole other pod on there, various other things. But no, if we're talking about the football side of things, absolutely they are. I think, and that's what ultimately they've paid the money for. They've made some really, really, I think on the one hand, they've made some really sensible signings, like Bruno Guimaraes, what a player. Very, very good player. Likes to carry Trippier as well. But I think Eddie Howe has done a good job of getting the most out of the takeover players. Miggy Almiron was one of them. I mean, like I said last week on the pod, I was a big fan of him when he was at Atlanta United in the MLS, and I think he had something about him. And I think his goal scoring touch, especially playing under bloody Bruce Ball, deserted him. But I think that's enough to make anybody depressed. But no, I think he's got. I mean, again, the goals he's scoring is a man of confidence. He's having his own goal of the month competition at the moment. I mean, it was very sort of Ivan Benes where he just took it past the defender and just slotted it in. And also, for another Donut of the Week award, along with Scott McTominay, Hugo Lloris, man, what are you doing? he just comes out into no man's land and then tries to claim a foul where he clearly messed it up. Callum Wilson, again, he's on that Danny Ings level of striker that, if he stayed fit, would absolutely be sitting on the bench for England during the summer. But no, I think they are serious. I think the only caveat I'd perhaps say is that they've still got to play some difficult sides. I think they've played a lot of teams where you think, they should be getting a result, but against Tottenham, they were good. And I think there seems to be a few dissenting voices, I think, within the Tottenham ranks. Certainly, looking at their own fans' reaction online. I think they're not as confident as they were a year ago that the performances justify the means.
Yeah. Sorry, I've just got a big smile on my face because it's just great to see them absolutely humbled. But
and
I was
also,
really,
did you see?
I was really happy to see.
As well?
Sorry, Andy, go on. Sorry.
Did you see the Conte comments as well? Like typical Conte,
no.
when he's not happy, he's like, "Oh, I need more time, money, and players."
Right
here we go.
I've seen this one before, Antonio. I've seen this one before. No, I'm just really happy that my Hugo Lloris agenda continues. He needs to be replaced. He drops too many clangers. He was great in his day. Get a new keeper, Spurs. Just get a new keeper. But for Newcastle, on a similar vein, you said they've turned like Miguel Almiron becoming a great player, Joe Linton becoming an incredible box-to-box midfielder is not a timeline I saw coming. But Piero, I'm going to ask you that. How much influence can a manager have on a player? Like, has a manager kind of, with your game, ever come in and just you've been like, wow, this has completely unlocked something that I didn't know I was unable to do? Or like, have you ever seen that happen with a manager? Because it seems like he's really unlocked these players completely.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a case of when a manager just kind of laid it out exactly what was expected from me. So I had a manager once. I was playing on the wing, young, so I was working hard, kind of up and down, maybe not necessarily producing enough going forward. And he just pulled me to one side and just literally said, "You're almost being too honest, like tracking back too much and stuff like that." He goes, "You're going to do that because you're an honest guy and an honest player. But as a winger, I need you to produce crosses and shots or shots." So my game just becomes so simple that as soon as I was out wide and I had the ball, I thought, well, I need to produce a shot or a cross.
Right.
And ended up being at that period in the league I was playing, just known for, I used to deliver crosses.
Right.
Because he just made it so simple, because that's how I'm going to judge you. So in my head, I was like, why am I going to waste time? Other stuff, that's my kind of KPI, let's say.
Yeah.
Shots and crosses.
Yeah. That's pretty simple, eh? It sounds pretty simple. Yeah.
So at least you know with the objective when you go out, where sometimes you have managers come in and obviously talk a lot of like fluff, let's say, and then you kind of going out and you're almost thinking, what is a good game for me today? Like, is what I think of a good game, is he going to think that's a good game? Or are we on two different maps? And that becomes a problem, because you might think you're playing well, but he wants something else. Or maybe he thinks you're playing well and you're thinking, I'm way off it. So that when a manager lies and just says, this is what I kind of expect from you, it's more tunnel vision. You know what you need to go to deliver, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely. I think he's like, Eddie Howe is a coach that people have been excited about for a very long time. It was a very sensible appointment from Newcastle. I think this whole thing they're trying to do relatively sensibly. What do you think it is that Eddie Howe has changed so much at Newcastle? Like, obviously the mood has been lifted, but what do you think, like playing style wise, he's changed at that club?
I just think it's a case of, let's say, trying to dominate the opposition or go after it. And as a fan, you don't want to see your team sitting back, and they've got a huge fan base. You don't mind losing if your team's gone for it. And it's not saying gone for it as in gung-ho, stupid, but you see them make an attempt to make an impact on the opposition instead of trying to just sitting back and just letting the opposition dictate the way the game goes. So I think if fans see that, they get on board pretty quickly. And you'll see with Spurs, they were, before that game, third, or before the United game, third? Something like that. And fans were still unhappy because they weren't seeing a team kind of get after it and try and make an imprint on the opposition. They were just a team sitting back, nicking results. It's all well and good, but once the results stop, then you don't have much to bargain with the fans.
Well, this is two big losses for them now in a row, losing to United and losing to Newcastle. They are not doing well against the teams they're supposed to be surrounded by. Things are
They
getting...
lost against Arsenal as well.
They
didn't
even
Like,
lost to us, and it was absolutely glorious. So things are getting a little bit hot for Antonio, and he doesn't like to stick around when things don't go his way.
Do you think he'll do one during the World Cup? Because that would be quite a good window to go, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Well, it depends what position they're in. It depends how the next couple of games go. I think, he's only got a couple months left on his contract, right? He will... Could he walk out? What do you think, Piero? He's pretty hot-headed, Antonio, right?
Is his contract until the end of the season?
He runs out this summer. He only signed an 18-month contract, which is the least level of commitment I've ever seen in football, I think, from a manager. But, what do you think? Could he disappear in January?
I heard, what did you say? 18-month with a 6-month release clause.
Like, if I'm bored.
No, I'm not sure, unless something drastic happens, like hugely embarrassing results, and they just drop way off. But I actually think he enjoys being at Spurs and London, and it seems like he likes it, because he's given it probably more time than I thought he'd give it. So I think he does enjoy. I've heard him do interviews in Italian TV and stuff like that about obviously unbelievable training ground, and I think he enjoys the whole environment, stadium, because it would be unbelievable to work in. But it's just his patience with trying to build an actual football team is the question. I think he'll stay to the end of the season. But I would like to see him stay. I hope the results pick up, or not too bad. Give him another season or so to see what he can actually do with it. But we'll see results. You know what it's like. They'll get him out quickly, or he'll leave if it goes the other way.
Exactly. I don't think anybody saw him leaving Inter when he did. He just literally ran out. So you can never second guess the guy. But before we go to the Champions League preview, I'm just going to very quickly say the referee at Arsenal was an absolute disgrace, but so were we. Our performances...
Also, I think to use your pun earlier, in is Jesse giving his marching orders? I think you said earlier.
Yes, Marsh. We have got to talk Jesse as well. The referee at Southampton was baffling. We've been asking for this performance. We've been asking for these results for a while. Leeds, we were very lucky. Southampton, we weren't lucky. The referee was terrible. Genuinely don't know what he was watching. Bianco and Cholet Char, I'm going to say is the name. Both of those could have been sent off, I'll be honest. But we need to very quickly talk about Jesse Marsh. I quite like Jesse Marsh. I'd be quite sad to see him leave. I feel like Leeds fans do not feel the same way. What do you think is happening here, Andy? Do you think, how long has he got left?
I think he's struggling anyway, because, again, by the virtue of just not being Marcelo Bielsa, I think the fans weren't quite ready to let go when they did, unfortunately. And I think, with Jesse Marsh, I think there was a period like a few weeks back when we were saying he looks like he's got a tune out of them. It looks like he's sort of adapted the Bielsa style of play to something a bit more sensible and less chaotic. But I think the performances have sort of dived off a cliff. But I think with Leeds as well, I don't think they've had. I don't think the squad's had the necessary investment, certainly in the past transfer window. I think they've got some good players in, but they're still very, very light up front. I think with Patrick Bamford coming back from injury, Rodrigo being very, very hit and miss a lot of the time.
More miss than hit.
He'll score like 3 or 4 goals in a handful of games, and you won't see him for about another 2 months. And I think they need a bit more consistency up front. I think even, like I said, letting Dan James go to a divisional rival in Fulham, I don't think was the smartest idea in the world, because although he's quite limited technically in terms of what he gives you in terms of pressing and following instructions to an absolute T, both his managers at Swansea, even at United and at Leeds, he's always done that, is that he knows how to press, he knows how to follow instructions. I think maybe they're a little bit
He gives
hasty.
you that outlet, right? He always gives you that outlet.
Yeah, I think there maybe, and there wasn't really like a direct sort of replacement for him. And I think, when you look at their starting lineup, they're there. Yeah, Sam Greenwood, who's an academy lag, and Mark Rocker. And I think that was very, very lightweight midfield, to be perfectly honest. And I think they were just getting overrun. I think, I think they've still got the potential to get out of it. I think there are worse teams out there than Leeds United.
Just about.
Yeah.
I still feel like without him, Leeds get relegated last year. I still think if they keep hold of Bielsa, they get relegated last year. So I think
absolutely.
I feel like he did a good job keeping them up. They had a good start to the season, but I've just looked through their form and it's no wins in 8 and only like 2 draws. And you're like, okay, now it's looking a bit shaky. What do you make of Leeds and Jesse Marsch, Piero? Do you think, has he left an impression on the Premier League? Has he changed the narrative around American managers?
Not at the moment. Like I say, he kept Leeds up last year. Obviously, it's a great achievement. But I think Leeds fans are in love with Bielsa. And if they had a few more positive results maybe early in the season and they weren't in the situation, there'd be no questions asked. He'd be there. He was what they wanted, kind of attacking teams and making Ellen Road like a hard place to go to. And I think they haven't got over that yet. And for a manager, that's difficult when they're singing songs about the previous manager.
It's not.
That's never an easy thing.
Well, I remember Leeds fans when Bielsa got sacked. There was genuinely quite a sizable chunk of Leeds fans that openly said they would rather have gone down with Bielsa, that's how attached they were to Bielsa. Is that they would have taken relegation, and his reputation would have,
Well, that's the cult that is the cult of Bielsa. Like, I am obsessed with the man. I absolutely love him, but he demands this, like, just the way he is. Fan bases fall in love with him. And I think you're right. I saw Leeds fans like in tears, just crying like they could not believe he'd gone. It's a difficult shoes to fill, very difficult shoes to fill. And Jesse is not doing it. I do worry for Leeds. I really want them in the Premier League. I think they bring so much to the Premier League. They're a team that other teams hate, so they bring rivalry. Ellen Road is a classic ground. It's difficult to go to. I'd much rather that than a Bournemouth. Sorry, Bournemouth fans. But I really feel like Leeds bring something to the Premier League. So that is the Premier League review, I think, guys. We need to very quickly go to the Champions League preview. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. I'm going to go with Andy first. Which Champions League game are you looking forward to the most this week?
I think just Barcelona, for the sake of them just getting booted out of the Champions League and having to play Thursday night. Not only are they going to get, battered, they're going to get absolutely battered by Bayern Munich. They're going to be playing Thursday nights, and they're going to have to find some new economic levers to pull. And it's going to be such great entertainment. So that's obviously the big ticket game of that one. I think. Club Brugge, I think they're low key actually really good. I think I've read somewhere though, like the first Belgian team to qualify for the knockouts for quite a long time.
I think it's like Anderlecht in like the early 2000s. They've still not conceded a goal in the tournament, which is madness. And they've got Mignolet in goal. What is happening? They've still not conceded a goal. Absolutely crushing it. Piero, which games are you looking forward to the most?
Probably Barcelona game. Like Andy said, they most likely will probably go out. Obviously, it doesn't really depend on them. Inter just need to kind of do the business, and they're kind of knock them out. Benfica Juve.
Nice. That is a huge game for Allegri.
Last chance saloon for Juve. Obviously, need to beat Benfica and then hope. I think they're playing Maccabi Haifa, Benfica last game, so they've got a bit of a touch with that. But they've got to at least give themselves a chance to kind of take it to the last game. Yeah. And then obviously Milan, Zagreb, and Chelsea, Salzburg. It's become a sticky situation all of a sudden facing Milan.
Yeah, it's a kind of close, very close group, that, right? Chelsea top on 6, Salzburg on 7, Salzburg on 6, Milan on 4, Zagreb on 4. It's all to play for, right? How are you feeling about Milan's chances?
It's in your hands. You win the last 2, you go through. but I've still got a bit of taste in my mouth with the 2 Chelsea games.
Fair.
Not because
especially the last one as well. Like that was
frig me.
not necessarily because of the results, because of course you can lose. It's just we never actually gave them a good crack, and I think we let them off the hook twice. That's why I'm unsure about Chelsea, because I don't think they've played anyone decent yet. So I think they're riding possibly a false wave. But yeah, that especially for me, being a Milan fan in England, I wanted everyone to see like the Milan that I've been seeing. And we didn't. So that was the kind of the bit of taste left in my mouth.
Yeah, no, you're right. You just didn't give a proper show of yourselves. It's frustrating, right? Really, really frustrating. I'm going to bring kind of a few more games. I'm going to say Dortmund City could be an interesting one. Jude Bellingham in massive form. Haaland going back to his old stomping ground. Will probably get a hat trick, but could be an interesting game. That's on Tuesday night. RB Leipzig, Real Madrid could be an interesting one on Tuesday night as well. I'm also going to say Ajax, Liverpool. Huge game that. Ajax been humbled a little bit. Liverpool humbled a little bit at the weekend. That could be an interesting one. And I'm also going to throw in Napoli Rangers.
Oh, I think Rangers are going to get absolutely pasted, aren't they?
I feel like that could get really ugly.
Well, it's already getting ugly over there because they've had they just about scraped a 1-0 win in the Scottish League Cup, and then it took the opposition going down to 10 men just to get a draw against Livingston. They really are in a really shit spot, and it looks like I think Van Bronckhorst will be one for getting his P45 before long.
And I think a trip to the Stadio Maradona is not what you need at the moment. With this.
No. Honestly, I think Napoli, if they turn it on, they could do him 5 or 6-0 easily. I'm a bit worried for them. I think another good neutrals game. I think Celtic Shakhtar will be a good one. I think
if Celtic can finally put a chance away in the Champions League, they could actually. They've had so many opportunities.
Yeah,
and they've not taken any of them.
They've given it a go, and I'm a fan of Postecoglou as a manager as well. I think he plays some really, really nice football, and I think he'll end up in England soon enough. But I think they'll look at this Champions League campaign with a bit of regret, because they haven't just sat back and got pasted 4 or 5-0. They've tried to go after teams and get a result, and they've just been caught perhaps for not having enough quality. But for a Scottish team to get through, to even be competitive at the group stages of the Champions League is an improvement over what we've seen in the past few years.
Definitely. I think they can slightly have the bragging rights over Rangers, maybe a little bit in the Champions League this year, but it's kind of like 2 bald men fighting over a comb at this point, I think. But we are going to leave it there. I'm going to say thank you, Andy, for joining us as always. Always good to see your face. And Piero, thank you so much for coming on the show. We hope you'll come on again for a Monday Live. If you fancy it, we will definitely have you back.
Whenever.
Good lad. And listeners, viewers, thanks for joining us. You guys as well. Please, as always, like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod. Follow us on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod. Match with us on LinkedIn, all those things. We are everywhere, and we will see you on Friday. Thank you very much, guys.